Hello. Oh, there we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited for my guest today. We have the Maggie Reyes on. And if you don't know about Maggie already, well, you heard in the intro, but she'll tell you all about her. But she is one of my favorite coaches in the whole wide world. She is my marriage coach. And we have been thriving in relationship land together for the last couple years. So, Maggie, welcome to
Thank
the
you for
show.
having me.
Thanks
I'm
for being
so
on.
excited to be here. For everyone who doesn't know me yet, it's awesome to meet you all. I am a marriage coach. I help type A women have better relationships without waiting for their partners to change. And I'm so excited to dive in everything relationship related we're going to talk about today.
So good. There have been so many moments, whether it's us in coaching or the course that I'm in, and or just I was listening to
Yeah.
your podcast this last week, Maggie, and I was like, ooh, but this. So there's so many concepts that I feel like you
Yeah.
teach in relationship land that one we could all use for our relationships, but also can
Yes.
relate to our health lives. Um, Okay, so before we dive, I'm going to get excited. Before we dive into those, I would love for you to share like your story of how you even got to be this incredible
Oh, wow.
relationship
I
and
love
life
it.
coach.
So once upon a time, I met my husband. And I had a really great experience that was also a really difficult experience. So when I met him, I had this incredible sense of rightness. Like I was with the right person at the right time in the right place. Just everything just felt like right. And some people will feel that with a partner. People might feel that when you're running or doing a hobby or with their children or when you're like in the flow, if you're like a painter or a writer, right? Like this feeling of this, like this is where I need to be, right? And once I had that feeling, then I saw all the places in my life where I did not have that feeling. And one of them was in my
Mm.
career. And my friends thought I had a really sexy career because I worked in HR and I traveled all over the world and did, worked on fun projects and things like that. Um, but for me, I really understood that it's like, oh, but this doesn't feel the way that feels. And I want to feel this way, in my life, not just in this one part of my life. So really, that was really the beginning of I took aptitude tests. I took all kinds of quizzes, all the personality. I just went on a journey, and I really didn't know when I started the journey that this is where I would end up. It was truly just like, I wonder what I want to be when I grow up kind of feel. And one of the things I did was I went back to college. I had not graduated. I went to some fancy four-year schools, but I hadn't graduated from them. So I went back to community college while I was working. And at that point, that was an amazing experience. I had a wonderful educational experience. And then the community college in Miami, which is where I live, is one of the largest. I think it is the largest in all of the United States. And our commencement speaker back then was the president, which was Barack Obama at the time. And it was such a culmination of just a chapter in my life to think, oh, I went back to complete an incompletion, which was my schooling. And then the presidents came. It was like it was just this amazing feeling that was very meaningful to me at the time. And then at the time I was working in HR and I had to decide, am I going to keep going in HR and like maybe get a master's degree or something, become a VP of HR somewhere? Or there's this new thing that I could be, which is a life coach. And I ended up deciding to go to life coach training and become a life coach. And so it began.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that, Maggie.
Yeah.
I was so curious. And I think that itself, what you just shared, like your
Yeah.
journey to get there, even, it wasn't like you were like, I'm going to be a marriage life coach and I'm going to do all these things. It was exploring and it
Yes.
was a journey. And for most of us, even if we do know that
Yeah.
destination, have an idea of it, we want to kind of skip like race
Yes.
through the journey part. And so that's so powerful, I think, just to even hear like there's always a journey. And the more we can embrace that, like you might have missed that step
Yeah.
of if you didn't go back to school and start to learn and do all those things and
Yeah.
have that moment with Barack Obama. Like you might have missed all of
Wouldn't
that
that be
to
sad?
then
We
be
wouldn't
where
know
you
each other,
are.
Samantha. I'm kind of bummed. Like, I don't want to be part of that universe where I skip a step. Yeah, no, I do not want that. I do think it's so important in the beginning of any journey. We don't really know how it's going to go, but there usually are mile markers along the way. So I knew that I loved
Mm.
people. I knew that I loved curiosity. There's a lot of pieces that I was like, oh, I know I like this. How can I mix this with this other thing I like, or stuff like that. And I think that that's important because then once I did land on, and this was also very serendipitous. My very first coach just asked a question. She said, what could you talk about without ever getting bored? So everyone listening, what could you talk about without ever getting bored? Pay attention to the answer to that. It could be a hobby. For me, it turned into a profession, right? But I was like, oh, relationships. And I'm here to tell you, I don't know how many years, more than 10 years later, I am still talking about them and I am not bored. So,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
So
So
good. Okay, I love
yeah,
that too. That's a
yeah,
great nugget right there too. I think a lot of us have problems like
yeah,
listening to that intuition of like
yeah,
and acknowledging or the mile
yeah.
markers along the way. And that's just really powerful to like I'm
Yes,
thinking about this in
wellness. Yeah,
health and
yeah,
eating and workouts where it's like we hear all the fancy like
yeah,
shiny things like
yeah.
keto diet or low carb or 90 days something or another or this cleanse and it's like yeah but does that really sound good for you?
Yes.
Like I love
Yes.
pizza and beer and all the things like that sounds horrible to me to ever like
Yeah.
give anything up fully. And so I
Yeah.
think, oh, and same with workouts. I love to run. Doesn't mean anybody else. Like, what do you love? And so that intuitional hit is like, what do you like for your healthy lifestyle and for your workouts? Like, I think anyone
Yes.
could just use that
Can we talk about
nugget.
workouts for a minute? Because I have a story about workouts. So
Yes. Okay.
I've worked with many coaches over the years, and one of my coaches, she asked me how often I was moving my body, and the answer was very embarrassing. We don't need to discuss, but my coaching homework was you must find a way that you like to move your body. Like that was the homework. So I could do anything
Mm.
basically, but I had to like report back. She was very into accountability. I had to report back. And I
Mm.
remember feeling like perplexed and confused. I just wasn't a person who was really used to moving a lot. It wasn't my persona. Like some people, they're like athletes in high school or whatever. No, I was like the English nerd and the Spanish nerd. Like that was not me. So I remember my husband coming home that night and I said, this is my plan. I'm going to join the local gym and I'm going to go to every class. And then I'm going to decide which one I like. And then he did it with me, which made it so fun. But we literally went to a Zumba class. We went to a jazzercise. We went to like all of these different things. We went to a cycling, which it turned out it was so popular and everybody was doing it. I'm like, oh, I do not like that at all. Like I had a visceral no to that. And we kept going to all the classes. And because we kept going to all the classes, and that was the goal, right? It was just to try all the classes. We went to
Nope.
aquafit, like water aerobics. And I loved with a passion that goes beyond understanding freaking aquafit. It was my favorite thing. I did it for several years. I absolutely like loved it. We had so much fun doing it. We had our favorite teachers. We would like do it together as a, sometimes I'd go by myself and sometimes I'd go with my husband. And what happened over time is I needed to change, like, the reason I'm going to talk about this is even in your workouts, you can have seasons where I had a season that was several years long, that was the best workout and I loved it so much and it was amazing. And then my schedule changed and my body changed. And then I really needed to just walk. And then sometimes I walk outside, sometimes I walk on a treadmill, sometimes I do different things. But that idea of like, number one, just try everything that they offer and see which one you hate the least for some of you listening, or which one you could actually like and
Yes.
embrace. And then acknowledging, I think for all of us, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, Samantha, too, that we have seasons we're sometimes for reasons like
Yeah.
our body is just like, no, we're not doing that now.
110%. I
Yeah.
agree with both of those. That's like first and foremost in your workout exercise journey is like, what do you
Yes.
actually enjoy doing? Because I say to that is like, if you're not feeling motivated, which is a
Yeah.
big common barrier, I'm not motivated. Well, it's probably because you don't want to go to the gym because you hate being with the bros in the gym, like, and you don't know what to do. So don't do that. Like, find what you love. So, and I love
Yeah.
that goes back to
Yeah.
our exploration and journey. It may take you weeks, it
Yeah.
may take you months, but hold the space to find what you
Yeah.
love because, as Maggie shared, like, you might find something you love with a
Yes.
passion that you never even
Yeah.
knew existed. Um, so absolutely yes to that. And then
Yeah.
for this seasonality, 110% for that, because even in myself, like, yes, I've an ultra runner. I've been doing these for 10 years now, but I still race in seasons. I don't race all
Right.
month long, all year long. I usually pick races in the fall. I don't like to run in the winter.
Yeah.
I acknowledge that about myself. I don't want to run in the cold. I'm not that hardcore. So, like,
Yeah.
I would rather
Yeah.
spin in the winter and go inside
Yeah.
in the gym and lift weights. I enjoy that. And then even I think to that point, so it's like
Yeah.
definitely there are seasons where like I even
Yes.
ebb and flow, listening to what I like and owning
Yes.
that more and more each year. And then, and then just in life where it's like, yeah, there might be, I might, like I've done ultras many years in a row. And then last year I didn't do a big race at the end of the year because I
Yeah.
decided to work on my business more.
Yeah.
And that was my priority. So I just kept an even keel of workouts. I was really into the stairs, even
Yeah.
like not running as much, which I will say too, felt a little weird. Like I had to check in with myself and be like, my identity feels very wrapped up in Ultraland and running. So I had to be like, no, this is what serves me right now in this
Uh-huh.
year and this season. Maybe it'll come back next year, in which it did.
Yeah.
And I'm like, heck yeah. Maybe it doesn't, but that's okay to hold the space for whatever's
Yes.
going on in life. If it's the priority isn't push, push, push with some, or the specific workout, if you need to change that, like
Yes. I
hold
love
the
that so
space for
much.
that.
So good.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. I love hearing about your workout journey there too. Um, so, okay. And it's great to hear about your journey to becoming a coach too. So I had some ideas for today as far as like you have some concepts that you
Yeah.
teach around relationships that I would love for everyone to just one hear those, but then also how those we could
Oh,
use
yeah,
those for our
fun.
health
Okay, yeah, I
and
feel like
fitness.
pop quiz. Okay, here's the concept. Here's how we're going to use it for fitness. Okay,
Yeah.
let's do it.
Okay. So, and if you have any that come up for you, please feel free. But I have some notes here of a couple that already came up. Okay. So the first one
Yes.
is the power of one. So I'd love for you to share
Yes.
what's the power of one. And then let's just go back and forth on like how people
Okay,
could use
okay.
this for
So the
health
power
and
of one is
wellness.
basically one person can change the world and one person can change a marriage. Like we get bogged down thinking, oh, if my partner isn't doing things with me, then there's nothing I can do. And there's nothing I can do is like a poison thought that is bad for you in every part of your life, whether it's your workouts or whatever. And let's just pause there. So usually, right, we use the power of one to remind you there is something you can do. This is directly related to your workouts. And I'm going to give you example number one is my husband several years ago broke his leg and he loves bicycling, like outside and like he won't go to a spin class, but he'll bicycle like all over the neighborhood. And he couldn't because he broke his leg, his ankle. And he started kayaking because he loves being in nature. He loves being outside. And he's like, oh, what can I use? It just uses my upper body. And then he went and kayaked. So the idea that there's always something we can do is really one of the foundational things of like, what's the reason for the power of one is just to remember there's always something we can do.
Oh my God. I love that. Gold star. um, And
Yeah.
this concept, so for everyone listening, this is a concept that Maggie teaches.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, and we can link in the show
Yeah.
notes the podcast you have to it. And it's in her Marriage Mindset Makeover course. And I have used this concept personally in my relationship life to always come back to like,
Yes.
what do I own here? And so I love what you said. And a thought that came up for me, even for everyone to use this concept, is also really owning where you have that responsibility to yourself for your goals. Meaning, a lot of times people are like, but my kids, I can't get out to work out because my kids or my partner eats, can eat whatever he wants and I can't. And so we want to abdicate that responsibility on our work. The work has put too much demands. I'm overwhelmed. Our kids, our partners. And instead, if we just look inside ourselves, this might be an exercise that might trigger some people, but like to really look inside yourself and see how you can own that power of one, where you can take that responsibility. What's that action you can take to move forward in your health and life goals? And when we think about those
things you mentioned, your work, your kids, maybe your partner, these other parts of your life, when we think about the power of one, it really comes from systems theory and psychology, which is you do the thing, whatever the thing is, and then the people in your life respond to that thing. So for work, right, if work is taking a lot of space and you're working a lot of hours and suddenly you're like, well, I will no longer work past 6 p.m. You do that thing. And then the people, the coworkers, the boss, the friends, whoever is involved, will respond to that thing, sometimes in positive ways, sometimes in negative ways. You know, somebody could say, well, you have to work, 10 hours or we don't want you here. It's like, well, that would be data you would want to have about your job. Do you want to work in a place that won't let you honor your body, right? So you take that first step. You go first, which is part of the power of one too, is like you go first and then you see how the people in your life or the situations respond to that. And then you make decisions accordingly. And then with your health, it's like you go first with the relationship you want to have with your body, which is ultimately what helps us have our relationships with everything else. It's like relationship one. You know how they have like patient zero? I mean, they do the movies and stuff like that. It's like we are like relationship one is the one with our body. And then we let that be there and take up space and then see how the rest of the parts of our life respond and then make decisions in those parts of our life.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you for adding that on. I think that's so powerful for people to use. So the power of one, y'all. We'll link Maggie's podcast to that because I think that's been one of the game changers for me. Still to this day, always I use this concept, and you could use it for your relationship. You can use it for your health, any area. I feel like this power of one. Okay. This is, so you have this concept and this idea you bring up a lot of the 5-star relationship. So I love to hear tell everyone what that is.
Okay, this is going to be fun. I can feel it already with your body. Okay, so I used to work in hospitality and I worked in the cruise industry. And then my last job in hospitality, I worked in ultra luxury, like multi-million-dollar hospitality situation. I worked for a private yacht called the World, and it was like if you imagine a Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton, but like at sea. It's amazing. And so I thought a lot. Obviously, I thought a lot every day at my job about 5-star service and what that entails and what that's like. And when I started doing marriage coaching, I thought about a lot of people are living in a motel marriage where there's like scratchy sheets and cold showers and everything is kind of like it's there, but it's just kind of okay, right? And I was like, what would it be like if you went from a motel marriage to like a 5-star marriage? Like, what would be the difference where you look forward to coming home at night, you feel a warm welcome, you give a warm welcome, you just feel like delighted, like what is that experience like? And then what are the stages in between? So one of the things that I talk about a lot too is if you're in a motel marriage right now, imagine just going from a 1-star to like one of those 3-star places with the hot breakfast, like you can have an amazing life at one of those 3-star places with the hot breakfast. We don't even have to get to the 5-star place, right? And so that's kind of the analogy that I give. And a lot of people, they kind of feel unsettled in their relationship, but they can't really tell why sometimes. And so when I talk to them about, are you in a motel situation right now? They're like, oh, yes, I am, right? And then we're like, okay, here's where we're going. Here's what we want. So if we think about your body, your relationship with your body, your relationship with your fitness or with your nutrition or something like that. So everyone just listening, just check. Are you in a motel right now? Does your body feel energetic and like you could do anything that you want to do? Do you feel lethargic? Like, how are you feeling, right? We can rate it. Or does it feel like you love your body, right? Like if you walk into a 5-star hotel, most of them have beautiful lobbies with fresh flower arrangements. They smell amazing. So imagine walking into one of those places and just feeling that amazingness. Do you feel that way when you take a moment and you sit with your body, right? Now, I do want to acknowledge, like a lot of us, including me, have trauma histories in our lives, and sometimes our body doesn't feel like a safe place to be, right? And maybe we wouldn't have that experience. But let's think about going from the motel to the place with the hot breakfast, right? Maybe there's some parts of ourselves that will take longer to work through, that we might not feel that amazingness, but we can feel a little bit more peace, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more enjoyment. Let's not go to all or nothing thinking, which is it's either the best or the worst. Like, let's go like, wait, what about the middle? The middle could be amazing. So that's how I would apply it to the body. What do you think?
Oh my God. I love that. I love that. I don't know if I'd actually heard your motel fully to like 5-star analogy, but that's phenomenal because what you just described, I feel like I even got those feelings of like, you can really check in with yourself of like where you're at and know. And I feel like we've all had enough of that experience, or if you've not been to the motel, I actually haven't been to the motel, but I know what those look like.
Yeah.
Like I can imagine. So, oh, that's so great, Maggie. So everyone check in with yourselves. Where are you at? And so let's just share even from that. What is a tool or something you could see helping people go if they're in a motel or if they're in even the 3-star, like what's one step or a tool they could take?
I love it so much. So here's the first one. And I think you could this is the one for everybody for your coaching homework from today's episode is what is your minimum baseline? What is your standard? So I'm going to explain it in the hotel world, and then we'll talk about it, the relationship and with the body. So when you go to a place like the Ritz-Carlton, their standard is they want everyone to feel a warm welcome. They want everyone to feel welcome while they're in the hotel. So they answer the phone in 3 rings. So if you ever have the opportunity to be in a Ritz-Carlton, you'll remember me because they will answer within 3 rings. Now, if we go to, Joe Schmo's on the corner place, it might be 15 rings before because their minimum standard is you will have a bed, right? That's it. You'll have a bed, you have a service is not our standard. So what for everyone listening is like, what do you want your minimum baseline or your minimum standard to be? And then from that standard, you decide what is that? How do you implement that on a day-to-day basis? So how do you operationalize that? So in my relationship, for example, I always joke around that marriage coach got a marriage, right? Like I can't be teaching all these things and then ignoring my husband. That would not be good. Plus, I like being married, so I don't want to do that. So very rarely do I teach classes at night. Like I like the evening time. So my standard is that I like to spend my evening time with my husband as much and as often as possible. Sometimes I'll make an exception, but it's the standard, right? And so then what I do is sometimes I say no to things to keep that standard. So that's how one of the ways that would appear like in my relationship. That's like my little answering in 3 rings is saying no to that. So what is that with our body? What's my minimum standard? So I will say I am 49 years old and I have decided that I need to consume more protein. Like that's just one very, very simple thing that I'm doing to love my body more. And so my standard is like, how do I add more protein to my meals? How do I make it easy? First of all, it has to be easy or I won't do it. And so let's be clear.
Yes.
And then I'm like, okay, so this morning I had a hard-boiled egg with my toast. I love having the toast. I'm not having the toast because I love it. But I added, and then that's like my standard is I'm always like, oh, I probably will have an egg, or I found this milk that has like it's fortified with extra protein, and I had that last week, right? So I'm, like my standard is I'm doing this thing to love on my body, and then how do I implement that? So that's a simple one. I even had a body one. How about that?
Oh my gosh, I love that. All of that. So good. So
Yeah.
y'all find your standards and then how do you implement that? And that's so powerful.
Yeah.
I think too, I just wanted to share one thing for everyone there too. What I generally tell my clients and have done for myself is 4 workouts a week is like my minimum standard for working out. And that's because I also have a 2-day rule. You never go more than 2 days without moving your body. I don't care if that's a walk. I don't care like what. Yeah. But just don't go more than 2 days because then you never have to climb the hill up and start quote unquote from scratch again, whether it's your brain telling you that or you physically. So 4 days a week accomplishes that. And it's 30 minutes for me. And that's kind of a nice baseline standard anyone could use is like move your body 4 days a week, 30 minutes, even if that's a walk, and then think about doing that day after day,
and
month
notice
after month, year.
the impact of that would be amazing, right? Day after day. And notice for everybody that you're going to have to say no to things to say yes to your standard. So at the Ritz-Carlton example, they had to have enough staffing, right, to be able to answer the phone. And they have to then make a bunch of other decisions to be able to hold that. Yeah.
Yes. Ooh. And I love that part. Thank you for like really putting the exclamation point there is because that's so true to be able to do that. We might have to tell our partners, hey, I need you to make supper tonight so I can go work out. Or tell our kids, hey, you guys can either play here or go on your kid care because I'm going to go work out. Whatever it is, that's a barrier.
Yes.
So good. Okay. 5-star health and wellness body is coming up. Okay. This one, I heard this in your podcast the other day and it clicked for me. You have this concept called no complaining, no defending.
Okay.
So tell everybody what this is and
this is kind of funny because it is related to health and wellness, and it's like we're going to do a full circle. So when I explain that, it'll make sense to everybody. So the life coach school where I trains life coaches and weight loss coaches. And I am surrounded. It's so funny because I also have a certification in sex, love, and relationship coaching. So I'm surrounded by weight loss coaches and sex coaches, just like in my life on a daily basis, which I highly recommend. It's really fun. So I'm surrounded by weight loss coaches, and they're often discussing one of the tools that many of them use is this idea of no flour and no sugar. And the reason they use this tool, the way that they've explained it to me, is when you remove those two things, it's like you take away any false signals of the body of hunger, and then you're able to determine what your real issues are. It's kind of like you remove these things to get to figure out what do you have to work on. And it's usually like a temporary, for most people, you don't remove them forever. It's a temporary thing to recalibrate your body and then figure it out. So I was surrounded by this for years. And one day I sat down and I said, what would be the no flour, no sugar of relationships? Like, what would be the thing that if you removed those things, whatever's left is what you really have to work on in your relationship? And I just sort of sat with it. And then I was like, I think it's complaining and defending. Like, if we stopped complaining and we stopped defending, then whatever is left is what we actually have to work on together. So I called it emotional weight loss because it was inspired by this whole weight loss idea. And it's very, very, very simple. You do things instead. So people sometimes will hear no complaining, no defending, and they're like, well, how do I stand up for myself? Or what do I do? Right? So no complaining. Instead of complaining, you make a request. So no complaining, and then you make an ask. So for example, if I go to a restaurant and they serve me a bowl of soup and the soup is supposed to be hot, but it's cold, I could sit there for 20 minutes just complaining about how they served it wrong. It would not produce the result of warm soup. I would just be there, right? Which is what we do with our lives and our partners. So with our bodies, right? Sometimes we complain, oh, I felt this the other day. I felt like tight because I haven't done yoga in a while, and I like to do yoga to like stretch and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I could just spend half an hour telling myself how tight my body feels. Or right then and there, I could like touch my toes and bend and move and shake a little bit and help myself in that moment, right? So the no complaining is what you do instead is you make a request. And then the no defending is what you do instead is you get curious. So you ask questions. So in a partner situation, it's kind of like they tell you something and your defenses come up like, I didn't mean that, or that wasn't it. But instead of going to that, you go to like, oh, tell me more. Like, how did you receive that? Well, I want to understand. Like, you just get curious. So with your body, right, how do we get defensive with our bodies? We judge our bodies. We're mean to our bodies. We put up like I feel my body clenching even talking about it. Like we physiologically clench and hold our bodies. So what if we like dropped that defensiveness, right? I recently got mad at my body for being sick. Like I had a weird cold that never went away kind of thing. And I was like mad at my body. I'm like, my body's just my body. Like it doesn't make sense that we all do it, right? It made no sense. But I still did it. And then I was like, what am I doing? That was kind of being defensive with my body. And I was like, okay, what if we drop that? I was like, body, what do you need? Hey, go ahead.
Oh,
yeah.
So good. No, that was, yes. So I feel like we just need to like go back and rewind each time to like take notes. I'm a big note taker and things. And so the no complaining, no defending, like for your own self and your own body to start to consider using that tool. And I wanted to say with the no defending thing that I like in my relationship, this is one of the things I am working on, like not doing as much. And for anybody trying to not do that with their bodies, this is a journey. That it's not like we hear this concept and listen, I've heard this from Maggie a lot, like whether it's from the podcast or coaching, like I have heard this concept and I'm still working at it. Like it is something I have to constantly like, oh, back here. That's right. No complaining, no defending. And so when you think anybody thinking about that for their health life is like, you're going to probably have to redirect a lot of times. It's not just going to be, and it might be months, it might be years, and a constant practice of using this. So I just wanted to share that personally and like how that's shown up for me, and that like, no, none of us are just going to hear these tools and like it's going to happen over and over again, that you'll just constantly just be like, oh,
here's something I was talking about with like, one of my clients recently. I was talking about toothpaste. It's going to make sense in a minute. But when you think about having to repeat something and coming back to it, and that it's a journey and that it's a process, it's like, imagine that we were stranded on a desert island and we couldn't brush our teeth for 30 days. Right? We just couldn't. And then suddenly we come back to civilization and we brush our teeth. But so toothpaste still works, like the tool still works, but our mouth is very dirty. So we have to brush it, and we have to brush it every day. And then maybe we need a deep cleaning, which is when you hire one of us, right? You need a deep cleaning for your body, your health, your nutrition. You go to Samantha. If it's for your relationship, you come to me. But it's kind of like, oh, then sometimes we need a deep cleaning. I don't know if this happened to you, but sometimes I need that deep cleaning more, like it's supposed to be every 6 months, but I need it every 3 months because I got a lot going on in there, right? And so, and I still have to keep brushing my teeth too. I don't stop doing that either.
Oh, I love that. That is so good. So good. I even think about that too, just to kind of rant on that for a second too, is like just in general with our healthy lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that even myself as a health and life coach, Like I will
Yes.
still overeat at times. I will still, skip a workout because of whatever. Like that, like it's a
Yeah.
lifestyle, it's a work in progress, that there's never this
Right.
destination of like,
Nope.
oh, we have a perfect marriage, I have a perfect body, I
No.
never have to work out.
No.
No. Like you have to put in the
Yeah.
work most days and continue to learn and grow through that. Because even with like
Yeah.
marriages or working out, it's like if I just kept doing the same exact workouts and eating the exact same way, I could probably maintain that, but even then my body will
Yes.
change over the years. So if I don't change and grow, then I could still deteriorate
Yes.
in whatever way that looks. And
Same.
same with your marriage. It's like you could be lovely and things are good, and then but you still there's a time and a place where we need to put in not just the most days work, but
Sometimes it keeps
sometimes the
getting,
deep
and
cleaning.
also we have different developmental stages. So in marriages, let's say you have kids and you have a baby, then you have a teenager, then you have an adult, right? The things that requires of you, not just as parents, but also in your marriage together to take care of the baby versus the teenager versus dealing with the adults and all the wacky things we do once we grow up, right? They're very different. So
Yes.
also with our body, it's very different when we're 17, 27, 37, 47, right? Like our bodies need different things from us in
Yes.
different stages.
Amen to that. I am like, when I hear somebody say like, I want to be back at my high school weight when I was 17 or 18, and now
Yeah.
when you had no responsibilities, you
Yeah.
didn't have to adult really, like you had the
Yeah.
metabolism of a teenager, and you didn't have the stress and adulting and kids and a marriage. I'm like, those are two totally different lives. To like, don't try to get back to that. Just be who you are
Yeah.
now and want
And
what you want
think
now.
about logistically, like you actually wouldn't want to go back to that because maybe you had 3 hours to work out every day, but then you wouldn't have time for your kids or your partner or your career or your hobbies or your friends. Like really like the logistics of that are so different. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
So different. And I'm like, most people don't see that. I'm like, okay, see that
Yeah.
now. If you ever think that thought,
Yeah.
please don't ever
Yeah.
try to
Love
go
it.
back to there. Okay. So next one. Okay. This one was another one I saw the other day. The fight you don't start is the fight you don't have to
Yes.
recover from. I love this. P.S. Everybody, you just need to take this for your own
Yes.
marriage and relationship.
Yeah.
What Maggie's going to
Yeah.
share, but also how could
I
we
love
apply
this so
this
much.
to
This
our
is like
health?
so fun. Okay. So first of all, for couples who argue a lot, I just want to invite you to slow down, take a breath. The next time you have that impulse or that urge, like, do you really need to argue about that thing? Like, just check in. And sometimes when we're used to a lot of emotional fluctuation, whether it's how we grew up or relationships we've been in before, things like that, we pick fights on purpose because it's familiar and it feels safe. So I just want to let everybody know that if that's you, if you're the fight picker in the family, there's a part of you that feels really safe in that feeling, and that's why you keep doing it. But we can break that. Like that's breakable. It's a habit. And the best thing about discovering anything's a habit is that habit can be broken. So that's just that part. Now, the fight you don't start is the fight you don't have to recover from. Let's think about the downward spiral you don't take is the downward spiral you don't need to recover from. What is that with your body? Like, it depends. It could be eating choices. It could be moving choices. It could be reactions that we have. Like, sometimes we have the reaction of, well, I'm not going to work out because whatever and whatever. And then you go into that, you break your cycle of the 4 times your habit, and then it becomes so much harder to recover from that, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. That is exactly what
Yeah.
I had thought when I heard
Yeah.
that, and it clicked as far as
Yeah.
using that for our health goals. Is like, if you,
Yeah.
and I honestly, oh, I made a note of this earlier too, was like, I think that's
Yeah.
one of my superpowers. That's kind of like the unsaid thing. Like
Yes.
everyone sees me running
Yeah.
or pushing and that. But truly, one of my superpowers is that I don't get
Yeah.
defensive on myself ever enough. Because listen, I have
Yeah.
dessert most days, y'all. Like
Yeah.
I have the things, okay? And but I don't go down. I don't pick a fight
Yes.
with myself and go down I call it
Yes.
like the shit show spiral, where like you get so shame and guilt and down on yourself that then you say, well, F it. I might as well eat the ice cream and the pizza for the whole next weekend. And then I'm going to skip my workout because it's not worth it and all the things. I don't do that to myself. Like, or if I do, I catch myself
Yeah.
very quickly to be like, listen, you're fine.
Yeah,
Like,
and some of
you're going
us
to be
need help
okay.
with that. Like, I really want to be so present to that because both you and I work with coaches, and
Yes.
I've worked with coaches for many years on different things, where sometimes our natural inclination is to beat ourselves up, and we need someone to, like, figuratively and sometimes literally hold
Yes.
our hand and stop us from doing that and help
Yes.
reorient us to thinking about ourselves differently. So I just want to acknowledge that too, that if that's something that
Yes.
when you heard us say that feels hard, like that's okay. A lot of us need help with that, including like that's probably for both of us in different ways why we became coaches because people helped us through those
Yes.
things.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, even to that, like when I started to get coaching
Yeah.
over 3 years ago now, I feel like that's
Yeah.
truly like when my life changed. And not only for my business, but in all the other ways, because then I eventually found
Yeah.
you and found other coaches so that I
Yeah.
could pull myself out of that and didn't go down. That's what coaches
Yes.
do for me. Is if I'm in a shit show spiral, thank God I have a call with
Yeah.
Maggie this week or
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? So yes, honor and acknowledge
Yeah.
that like that's normal. Like that is what our brains do to us, and that is where getting
Yep.
support on that can help. And to go back to that too, it's like also just really being aware of like, are
Yeah.
you picking a fight with yourself? And the fight you don't have to recover from. You don't have to say, well, now it's been 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, because you
So
just
powerful.
didn't
I
start
love
that
it.
fight.
So good.
Yeah. Ah. Um, okay, let me see.
I love it.
That's like
Great.
the main ones that I actually had.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, is there any concept of yours that comes up that you really feel like you could kind of relate back that hits home for
Okay,
you?
let's see. I feel like I'm on Jeopardy. On the spot, double round. Which concept do we want to relate? Um, I'm gonna okay. I'm gonna take soul-centered communication for 500. So I teach a concept called soul-centered
Yes.
communication. Um, it's very simple. There's some instruction attached, but I'm going to tell you the very, very basics in like 1 minute, which is it's solution-focused, it's open-hearted, it's uncomplicated, and it's loving. And then it doesn't happen inside of a stress cycle. So I have a whole podcast episode where I go through each step, and then I teach workshops on it in my classes in the Marriage MBA and my programs. But here's what I'm going to repeat it again. Soul-centered means solution-focused, open-hearted, uncomplicated, and loving, and then not in a stress cycle. So if we translate that to our body, solution focused, what do I want to create in my body? What is the result I want to have? Sometimes I ask myself, how do I want to feel when I'm 80, right? And then what am I going to do now to help myself feel that way when I'm 80? So that's solution focused. Open hearted is where we don't beat ourselves up and where we're open to new ideas and doing things differently. Right, where we're open to, like in my case, to trying every class in the gym until I found one that I liked. Then uncomplicated. I think that this is the one where we're just going to stay on this one because I think this is the one that will help everybody the most if you just embrace this one idea. Whether it's your health, your wellness, or your relationships, or your work, and for anything, how can we make it simple, uncomplicated, so that it's doable and repeatable, and then it becomes our lifestyle? The more we complicate things, the less likely we are to do them. This is just always forever for everybody. I've never met anybody where complicating things helped them do it more. I have yet to meet that human. If you're that person, let us know. But for most of us, so staying uncomplicated, and in the context of communication, uncomplicated is we talk about one thing only, and then the next thing. We don't veer around. We don't do other stuff. So that idea of constraining to like, what is the one thing I'm going to do? So for me, it's like, I'm adding protein at breakfast. I'm doing one thing, like, oh, milk, eggs, fortified, extra proteinified milk, an extra egg, like one thing at a time, one thing only. I'm not overhauling every single thing that I eat. I'm just doing one thing, but I'm doing that consistently all the time. That's still better than doing nothing. There you go.
Oh my God. Yes, I love that. Thank you for bringing up soul-centered communication.
Yeah.
And by the way, we'll link that episode too, because I think that is also one of your most powerful like concepts that people could just grab and go from. But absolutely, these ideas for your health, so powerful in that solution-oriented, the open-hearted, like really being open to trying things differently. And what comes up, I just wanted to touch on that there. What came up for me was like, I think so many folks in health and weight loss and fitness are like, but I've tried all the things. No, but I've done other things and nothing has worked for me for a lifetime or for years. And when we stay in that place, when we feel that way or think that way, that you'll never be curious about what's on the other side and what could work for you, because there's, we both know there's something that will work for you. You just have to be open-hearted enough to explore. Maybe it's not the trendy diet things. Maybe you could have chocolate every single day if you then tweak these other things that don't actually matter to you. You don't actually care about the appetizer and bread, but you want your dessert. Okay, let's be curious. So I think that in relation to people really like feeling like, well, there's nothing that works for me, but hold on, just be open about what could work for you and exploring. And then, oh my gosh, yes, the simple and uncomplicated part about it, I feel like that is what I am good at and preach to my people is like, we don't log calories. You don't have to count your macros. You don't have to meal plan every Sunday. And that is how I'm able to do what I do with all the things I have going on in life, is because it's so freaking simple. Like, it's ridiculously simple that I like people, if they literally saw my life in a week with my healthy habits, be like, oh shit, that's what you're doing? It's like, yes, it's crazy simple. It's not rocket science. It's not complicated. And I love what you said to that, which is like, so many times we feel like we have to do the 180. We have to start the diet that has all the things every single day, eating perfectly, and then working out like 6 days a week, 5 days, 60 minutes. And it's like, hold on.
Simple.
It's just simple. One thing, just one thing. Yeah. So good. Okay. I love that. Okay. So I would love for you to share then, Maggie, share about what you do and how people can find you and work
my
with
pleasure.
you.
So you can go to my website, which is maggiereyes.com. That's always going to be the hub of whatever I'm working on, whatever I'm doing. You can find it there. And you can find me on Instagram. I hang out there quite a bit at the Maggie Reyes. I would love to hear your favorite takeaway from this episode. If you want to tag me or message me, we always love to hear from you. Like we're excited to like share the conversation, and we want to know what was your favorite part. Absolutely. Yeah. So the Maggie Reyes, and then I host a podcast. If you love podcasts, it's called the Marriage Life Coach Podcast. And I teach all of these concepts and the things we talked about today. And Samantha is on it. We should totally link to that episode as well. I think that would be so fun.
Yes, I will.
Kind of hear her relationship journey, which is so beautiful. So maggiereyes.com, at the Maggie Reyes on Instagram. Those are two of the best ways to find me.
Amazing. Okay. And I actually saw one other thing I wanted to share, because with the work that you do, this is good. Go find Maggie. I'm telling you guys, like, I really do. I just to that is like a lot of folks, I think before I found you or knew about coaching, like so many times in relationships, people are like, well, let me get a marriage counselor. Let us go to therapy. And listen, there is absolutely a time and a place for that. Like, I'm not negating that, but I also want people to know there are wonderful people like
Yeah.
you called a marriage coach that you just work
Yeah.
with the woman, like the one person, not a couple. And going back to that power of one, but in general, the power that you can change your relationship with having a marriage coach, like there are other options. I just want people to really hear that because so many times people are like, oh, wait, there's a marriage coach. And I'm
I
like,
love it.
hell
Yes.
yes, there
Yes.
is. um, so to that too, with the work that you do, because I know that the work I do affects every area of somebody's life. It can change any area of their life if they have that
Yeah.
foundation and they get their healthy habits on board. And I know it's probably the same for you. And I hear you talk about it too, where it's like if our relationships are on board, it can affect every area of our lives. So could you just kind of share like experiences to that and
Absolutely.
thoughts
So,
on
from the
that?
relationship side, once you go through some of the hardest conversations with your partner, usually all the other ones get easier. So, just baseline, a lot of your relationships sort of improve just because you're showing up differently. So, once you practice things like no complaining, no defending, maybe with your partner, you might also do it with your mother in law or the sister in law or whatever the case may be, right? So that's one thing. And then one of my favorite examples to share a story about how this happens in practice is I had a client several years ago who was really struggling to talk to her husband about money. So all her goal was to not freak out while talking to her husband. Like that was literally it. And we spent several weeks just talking about how she felt about money, what were some of the shameful thoughts and experiences that she had had that were just still weighing in her heart. And we sort of unraveled all these things and we talked and we found a place of peace for her with money first. So it was her relationship, like we said at the beginning, her relationship with herself and her money first. Then she was able to calmly talk to her husband about some things, some plans they wanted to make, and they had a kid in a sport, and a very expensive sport, and they needed to plan for that. So she was able to do that, and it was great. And we finished her coaching. It was amazing. And then several months later, she wrote to me, and you know those emails you get with like 1,000 exclamation points? It was like my favorite. So it was like literally an email that had like 100 exclamation points. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what happened. So I opened the email and she's like, you're never going to believe what happened. She got the biggest raise of her career with back pay. It's my favorite part is the back pay. Because once she was able to talk to her husband about money, it was infinitely more easy to talk to her boss about money and to have a calm, clear, professional conversation that ended up becoming her largest raise, like for the rest of her professional life now, right? Now her baseline is much higher, plus the back pay, which just always tickles me, which is so fun. So that's an example of what happens when you work on one thing, how it just overlaps into other places.
Oh my gosh, so good. That one like gave me
Yeah,
a little
so
goosebumps at
fun.
the end there to like hear that. Like
Yeah.
so powerful. Amazing. Okay, so Maggie, is there anything else that you want to share that we didn't talk
I
about
would
with the
just say I would go
listeners?
back to uncomplicated of just we talked about a lot of things. We went really deep in today's episode. I would highly recommend you come back and listen to it and take a note of just one thing that we talked about that you want to try. You can try
Mm.
different exercises at the gym, or you can try a different habit with your eating, like I'm doing with my protein. Like there's so many different pieces that we talked about. Just choose one. That's it.
Oh my gosh. I love that. Mic drop. I love that too because I actually had made a
Yeah.
note again from this, I think
Yeah.
it was one of the more recent podcasts you released. And it was that concept and you've said that
Yeah.
before, like even in your marriage and your relationship, if you simply took
Yep.
one of the tools that Maggie offers,
Yeah.
like or that we just talked about,
Yeah.
one tool and just practice
Yeah.
that like all year or for multiple months, forget about trying to do all the things because
Yeah.
then most of us just
Yeah.
drop the ball and quit doing them all. Just do the one thing that could literally change your marriage, that could literally
Yeah.
change your health life if you just do the one thing. So, and even to that, I want to like, when you guys hear maybe my podcast
Yeah.
episode, if you listen to that, but in general, that's a lot of what I've taken from Maggie in that in the course is like, I don't try to do all
Yeah.
the things at once. It's like, or even in my training, I don't train for an ultra while I'm trying to do this other thing on the
Yeah.
side and lift the biggest lifts. I do one thing. I focus on one
So
thing
good.
and go after
I love
it.
it.
So, so good. Ah,
Thank you
thank
for
you,
having me.
Maggie,
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone. This was amazing.